Recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cringy. Can you think about when I'm presenting as well?
Like, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
We have nothing now. It's. I do the same for you.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. I guess when we're done, I think we'll call Jericho. Is there a session that's in the main room as well?
No, I don't think so.
They all went to school. Makes sense.
Okay. I don't remember when this was like. Yeah. Often.
Yeah.
But in different second topics.
Yeah, and that's
But I've been talking about it about that topic. Because there's a lot of interest.
Yeah. Yeah. To be fair, you really kind of simple stuff, answer questions.
Yeah, but I forgot though, like Friday, I'm like, yeah, great, I'm going to present in English. I forgot.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
So I had to translate everything. It's like, I mean, I can speak English, but when I'm presenting, you lost the words and you don't have like specific terms. Things.
Yeah, and I think this is like probably niche. There probably are words that don't translate so well.
No, exactly. No.
Yeah. The challenges of having another language.
Yeah, you speak any other.
I'm trying to do this.
Yeah.
But I'll be fully here with it. Because when I'm with my wife, if we ever need to speak Swedish, obviously she did. Obviously they're not being here. Like I can't realize like I really am like really progressed. It's like your words and like, oh, I recognize that. But then you know, you jump in right now. Yeah. You know, I know a lot of people have said this, but I do because I mean,
I was going to have to wrap up.
roll yourself into it. So, my mother-in-law, she's Canadian. She came here, she didn't speak Swedish at all. I think that is probably what enabled her to learn it. She didn't try to do the like learn over time, like they've got to take a class, like
That was what I needed.
live it. Yeah. So I think that's probably what.
Yeah, it's the same way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, even it seems like the past like 4 or 5 years, English has become much more common from my perspective. Especially in Stockholm, it seems like I go into stores, but I can't show I flip Swedish as well. But they'll normally speak English to me at first, even before actually like starting Swedish, which I found was quite interesting.
Yeah, just see that you're not broken.
Yeah. I either they can sense it or you know. I think my wife says that like it's due to like where I'm from, the very be friendly, like especially the type of mentality is like you speak to people that you're near and like you like so much space and not
No.
So that's what she said, that like it's probably the way like how close I stand in line things like that. They're like, oh, can't be seen.
You're not aware of it, but probably
Yeah. So subconsciously I've done it my whole life, but like it's like I'm here and then you like stand and you're like maybe I flip too close, you're like
Okay, so maybe we should start. Okay, so welcome to this parallel session. I'm very happy to be here with Mark, John, and Alexandra. We have prepared a small Menti poll, so you can ask questions there, and we also wanted to collect some insights from you guys. So we're happy if you answer the questions there. You can also ask questions during the presentation if you want, because we're not that many in this room. So I figured, like, if you have a question, just raise your hand. So I'm here to present a project that is called the Digital Vision Sverige, and this project aims to create a Swedish national hub for digital twins within the built environment and the urban development sector. And a few words about me. My name is Camilla Berggren Paroli. I work in Stockholm at RISE. I have a background in architecture and urban planning. And at RISE, I work as a project manager, and I am the project lead of this project, Digital Vision Sverige. So that's why I'm here speaking today. And a few words about RISE then. If you know what RISE is, it's a research institute owned by the Swedish government. It stands for Research Institute of Sweden, RISE. And we have a special task from the government to be an innovation partner for the business and industry, and to accelerate the green transition in Sweden, and to be a part of the innovation ecosystem. This national hub for digital twins in Sweden, the idea of creating this kind of hub originally came from a strategic innovation program in Sweden called Smart Built Environment, and they wrote a couple of reports, and they saw a need for a better coordination of the Swedish digital twin landscape. So that's why they saw that there should be a place for this kind of hub. And they saw that the main drivers of the hub for digital twins was to establish and manage an information framework for digital twins in the Swedish urban development sector, and to drive internationalization, to build networks and promote collaboration among stakeholders to standardize the landscape for digital twins in Sweden, and to contribute to technical, economic, social, and ecological sustainability through digital twins. So they saw that there was a need for some organization to lead this road ahead, and they thought that RISE would be a good part to create this national hub. And so in the beginning of this year, we applied for funding from Smart Built Environment to start building this national hub, and we got a budget for 8 million kronor. That's about, I've heard that the the Swedish krona is really bad right now, but it's about
800,000.
yeah, 800,000 euros, more or less. And it started off in June this year. So it's a really new project, and we're just getting started. And we have 2 years to build the organization. And we try to separate like the national hub from the project. The project aims to build a national hub, so we're not actually, I mean, it's like a prototype sort of that we're building right now. And we're doing this together with our partner group. And the expected results for the project then is an organization with a long-term funding model that can coordinate and drive development and innovation in the field of digital twins in Sweden after the project ends, and to establish a network with stakeholders in the field where they can cooperate and find each other and together drive the development, and to create visions and roadmaps how to get there within digital twins. And we're also building a website for strategic guidance and also co-creation. And right now there's a prototype of this website. It's called the digivis.se. Just digivis.se. So if you want to look at it and follow what we're doing. And so this is our partner group. We're about 15 partners. It's municipalities, it's from industry and academia. And that's what we see is needed to really understand the needs of the hub and what is supposed to be doing. So we're working together and we're creating as we go along. So we get feedback from this partner group and try to understand what they need from us. Just to go like this. And the mission, our mission that we trying to create, well, we see that there's a lot of data here and it needs to be translated into knowledge. And we need to create available solutions and lower the barriers for all the municipalities that or stakeholders that want to start using digital twins. And we need to drive the development together and cross-sectorally to really get insights and create new solutions. And we need new tools and as well as new working methods. And there's also, we're looking into how to share data, security and the ownership questions that come with that. And also the visions, like how is a digital twin of Sweden it's going to look like in the future and how do we get there? So that's what we working at right now. And the vision is sort of going from this, just drowning in data, to actually be able to have something like this in the future. Yeah. And how we do this, like the four building stones of the hub is, like I said, a lot of networking and driving development together, facilitate development of prototypes and full-scale digital twins within the sector, and increase the level of knowledge and understanding of what digital twins are, and of course then drive and facilitate internationalization within the field. Yeah, so that's a little bit about the Swedish project, trying to build this national twin hub, and I'm very happy that the DTCC Center put us together with the UK version, and they're going to present a little bit about Digital Build Britain and what they've been doing in the UK. So I welcome, I think, Mark and only Mark, not Alexander.
Later.
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to try and compress 5 years of learning into 8 minutes. So you can tell that's going to be impossible, but I'll have a go. And what I'd like to do is just talk about some of the really key lessons that we learned on the National Digital Twin Programme. And the National Digital Twin Programme was based at CDBB, the Centre for Digital Build Britain, which was a partnership between Cambridge University and one of the UK's government departments. It was a really good thing while it lasted. The funding came to an end, so CDBB has come to an end. But we've got some really solid learning out of the 5 years that we worked on this. And rather than just let that learning go away or try and cover it in 8 minutes with a few slides, we thought it would be really good to capture it. So we captured the learning in something we call the Gemini papers. So you can Google these. And what the Gemini papers are about are the kind of lessons that you can take away if you want to run a connected digital twin program at a national level. So it's not about individual digital twins. It's not about what you would do in a company if you want to deploy digital twins. It's what you would do at a national level to get an ecosystem of connected digital twins running. The Gemini papers are very simple, based around why you would do it, what they are, how you go about it. They're really accessible. I would commend them to you. And so what I'm going to do in the next 6 minutes is run through some of those high-level lessons, and they kind of come under these headings. So I guess the first thing is to say what it is we mean by an ecosystem of connected digital twins, but more particularly how it's purpose driven. So we see this ecosystem within which each individual digital twin would be driven by purpose. And that purpose is really important because it informs everything to do with the design of that twin. And there's no point in developing a digital twin unless there is a very clear purpose. But then the connections between the digital twins that enable you to create an ecosystem, each of those connections should be driven by purpose as well. So what you end up with is a purpose-driven ecosystem. I think if it's not purpose-driven, you end up with a lot of fat in it. It doesn't do what it's intended to do. You waste a lot of money. So this purpose is an incredibly important starting point. And when it comes to the big purpose, the big why, we kind of see that you need to see the systems and big high-level systems outcomes in order to make sense of system tools like connected digital twins. So at a high level, you might imagine those to be SDGs, but then you can also see how it's important to have the outcomes you're aiming for aligned all the way through from global, national, regional, local. If they're not aligned, then you can't achieve the global outcomes. But the outcomes are kind of the starting point. It's the reason why we want to drive better outcomes for people and nature. That's the big why. And then we can see the role of systems in delivering those outcomes. And within the built environment, which is the scope we're working within, so this is basically everything we've built, economic infrastructure, social infrastructure, the interface with the natural environment. There are all sorts of processes. And those processes ideally should be connected in some kind of infinity loop. And within that infinity loop, there's all sorts of decisions being made. And digital twins fundamentally help you to make better decisions faster. So you can see many different digital twins for many purposes. And the ecosystem basically connects those up. And so what that means is with this ecosystem of connected digital twins, you can understand the systems better and intervene more effectively to deliver the outcomes. And I think without that big story, without that theory of change, then it doesn't kind of make sense to be doing digital twins or connected digital twins. You need the big narrative. So that is our big narrative, simply described as interventions, systems, outcomes. This whole journey, we think, absolutely has to be guided by values. That came up in the questions just now. I think it's super important. I'd like to talk about this a little bit more later in the day, so I won't dig into it just now, but we definitely learned on this programme that the overall programme has to be guided by values. It has to be built on values. And we developed these things, which are called Gemini principles, early on, and they seem to have come through the test of time, based around this idea of purpose, trust, and function. We also saw that the whole journey is not just a technical journey. Clearly, there's technical aspects, but in some ways, the technical bits are the easy bit. The difficult bit are the bits to do with humans. And so we described it as a socio-technical change program. So the social bit is all those human and organizational factors. It's things like data sharing agreements. It's the regulatory solutions. It's the commercial solutions. All those kind of things that if those aren't sorted out, then the technical solutions just simply don't work. So I think it's really good to frame it as socio-technical, but particularly socio-technical change, because change is implied. We're not at the desired state yet. We're at a different point now. So that means in order to get to the place we want to be from where we are, there has to be change. So it's really helpful, I think, to frame it as a socio-technical change program, because then that means you can work out what you have to do to get the change to happen, both in the human side and the technical side. One of the things which we did come up against kind of again and again was almost an artificial tension between the need to focus on value now and getting something done and delivering some value and low-hanging fruit and tangible, all those kind of things that people say. The tension between that and the kind of the future vision, the big ambition, where we're trying to get to, because it makes no sense to do those individual little things unless there is a destination. But if all you focus on is a big ambition and just talk about the vision and you don't do anything in the now, then you never get there. So the point really is you need to do both. It's to have the tangible steps in the now, which deliver value in the short term, but also have the coherent ambition where you're trying to get to. And then, of course, Horizon 3 is what you do to get from one to the other. And so this idea of having demonstrators was really important from very early on. We developed a demonstrator we called Credo. You'll hear a little bit more about that from John, but really important to let people understand what you're talking about with examples. And so that addresses the now, but then we've also got to address the future. We also saw that it had to be community enabled. This couldn't be done in a corner and then you're going to go, ta-da, there's the answer and expect everyone to accept it. It has to be developed together. So again, from very early on, we recognise the value of this community enablement. And John's going to talk quite a bit, I think, about the Digital Twin Hub, which came out of this idea. Super important to bring people together on the solution. And one of the little mantras that we came up with was about collaborating on the rules, compete on the game. Because competition is still useful, still really good for driving efficiency. But you kind of have to have shared rules, because if you don't have the shared rules, you don't even have a game. And so this whole idea of getting that right balance is important. And along those lines, we saw that it was incredibly important to bring together, and this has come out already today, the kind of key communities of industry, government, academia. You could talk about that in different terms of research, practice, and policy, but they have to come together, because if they're not meshing, then it doesn't work. And so finally, we saw that given all of the above, there's a kind of a structure that lends itself to delivering all of this. I won't go through it in detail. If you want to come back and talk about it, we can in the discussion. But basically, we identified that there were some key things which need to be worked on that have to come together in order to make this whole thing work. And this slide summarises them. So as a super quick summary, what we reckon, if you want to have a successful digital twin program that's connected at a national level, it has to be outcomes focused, systems based, community enabled, purpose driven, values guided, and socio-technical. And do you remember that Pepsi advert? You know, the lip smacking, thirst quenching thing? I think this is better. Okay, thank you. Alexandra, did you want to?
Yes, please. So Mark and I worked together on this programme for the entire time it was live. So I second everything that he said there. And just to add to all those documents, slides, all those links are publicly available, free to download, free to use. Please do, please read them. That's exactly why we made them, so that they will go out into the world and inspire people to do more and better with them. But I want to go back to this one slide here about the leadership. So just for literally a minute, all those things in the last slide, absolutely, we have to do those. But if we don't have the leadership to take it forward, it won't happen. So we need to have what we call visionary, boundary spanning leadership. It's people who will break down the silos, who will work across sectors, across organizations, across ways of thinking, across nations to make this happen. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's not the way that we've historically worked. We've historically been in our silo where I'm a chemical engineer, so I sit very much in that mind space, or I sit in the UK, I sit in that mind space. We need to break those down and work across those. It's about getting that leadership to think in a systems way, in a systems of systems way, because the issues we have are all systems based. The really big challenges we have in our time. That boundary spanning visionary leadership is absolutely key. That's all I wanted to add to Mark's slides. John, please come and talk about this one. Thank you.
Perfect. My name is John Holden, and I am from Connected Places Catapult in the United Kingdom. Connected Places Catapult is the UK's innovation accelerator for cities, transport, and place leadership. And not surprisingly, digital twins are heavily involved and invested in those three areas. So just a little bit about myself. I am the community manager of the Digital Twin Hub, and I am licensed in international law. So I actually come to digital twins from more of a policy perspective and the social economical impact of digital twins. And I've also included my email, because I really encourage all of you to reach out to me if you have any questions about my presentation, or if you want to get more involved with the Digital Twin Hub. But what is the Digital Twin Hub? You've kind of heard it briefly mentioned so far from our previous presentations, but the easiest way to think about it, it's a knowledge sharing community where people come together to learn about digital twins. And our kind of mission is to really bring the community together around digital twins so we can progress the ecosystem together. Because we know that unless we work together when it comes to the aspect of developing digital twins, we're going to end up kind of developing digital twins in different sectors that maybe don't connect. And then you end up having a much bigger problem down the road. When it comes to our community, we're very fortunate to have a rather large community. We have over 2,000 different organizations that are involved. We currently have 4,700 members that span over 83 countries. And ironically, our second biggest European country outside of the United Kingdom happens to be Sweden. I'm hoping after today, Sweden will overtake France. So we can hopefully bump it up. But we also have over 41 different sectors. As Alexandra mentioned, it's really important for us to bring that learning from different sectors, because with each experience of each sector, you kind of have the ability to learn where people may make mistakes, and you can figure ways to kind of cross the connection. Now, there's plenty of things that exist within the Digital Twin Hub, but these learnings, we try to offer them in very different ways. The most common way is actually through what we call is a Gemini call. And it's a weekly community online meeting where we bring 2 digital twin projects from around the globe. And ironically, we are probably in presentation number 2 today on the Gemini call, because it's actually taking place right now. So it happens every week at 10:30 on Tuesday, 11:30 Swedish time. And it's a really quick 30-minute call where you can jump in, learn about interesting projects, potentially share learnings, but you also have the opportunity to present if you want as well. So if you have a project that you want to maybe showcase to our community, you can contact me. Or if you just want to learn about interesting projects going on in the world today, you can do that by joining. Other services we offer are like where we just launched a course, Digital Twins for Senior Leaders, is what we realized when we were going out into different kind of communities, different organizations, different countries, was there was quite a large disconnect from the people who, are the decision makers and the people that are developing the digital twins. So we realized that we need to work on kind of bridging that gap. So we created a course that will enable senior leaders to have a better understanding of what is a digital twin and maybe why is it important to their organization. But we realized that's not the only form of learning that's important. So we also work to create an open source e-learning modules to help people just get a general introduction to digital twins. So those modules were really helpful for me because I came into the space not knowing much about digital twins. So those were vital for me to just get a better understanding and to kind of start that journey, because that's really where we see the Digital Twin Hub is. Regardless of where you are in the DT journey, we believe that you can come work with us and kind of progress yourself and progress the community. And then the final thing is just we have updates and news around different funding opportunities for SMEs. That used to only be in the UK, but we've started to expand that to go internationally, especially with Horizon Europe kind of enabling us to be back in the game post the Brexit decision that made it a little difficult for us to be involved. But I've already kind of highlighted a little bit about some of the offerings that we have. So I've talked about the Gemini call, which, as you can see kind of by the image to the right, it's not only focused on, like, say, transport sector. It's meant to be, we bring in case studies from a variety of different sectors to really dive deep into the learnings that they have. So, for example, today, the presenters are on, the first one is on knowledge graphs and how those can be used to build digital twins. And the second is on the use of sensors and the heart. So it's a digital twin of a heart created by the Alan Turing Institute in the UK. So like very different, as you can expect. And every single week we try to have different presenters to bring different kinds of learnings. But if a weekly call is your type of thing, we also have a variety of different case studies, which people can learn and share their own if they potentially have different learnings that they want to discuss. And finally, we try to really have the active program updates from vital digital twin projects that exist globally. One, most obviously, is the National Digital Twin Project in the UK. But we also have updates from like Digital Spine, which is focusing on like an energy sector project, and other catapults. So the Active Place Catapult is one of 9, and there are other catapults which deal with other sectors. And we provide updates on those and things like that. And finally, we on the DT Hub, we also have a lot of learnings from a digital twin demonstrator, which Mark mentioned being our Credo project. And essentially, the reason we felt it was vital to not only continue to promote the work of the Credo project, a digital twin demonstrator, was because we really saw it as a great opportunity to show a quality use case of a digital twin in, like, this can be used in any city, any different country, really showing the power of connecting different sectors together so that you can make yourself and your infrastructure more climate resilient. So with the Credo project, when it first got started, essentially they worked to connect the water industry, the telecoms industry, and the power industry, find ways to, deal with the challenge of interoperability, of sharing data, because those, as you probably have known today, are very complex challenges, but we try to bring them together so they can look to overcome those. And the Credo project has been going on for a few years, and there's continual updates of that project. So moving forward, it's actually going into a new phase to look at heat resistance. So seeing how the networks can survive when there is a climate emergency outside of flooding. So the Credo project is a really, really great example. So I encourage people to kind of look into that. And also Ahmet, who's presenting at one today, he is one of the technical leads behind the Credo project, and he is fantastic. So I suggest you listen to his presentation, because I guarantee you he'll be able to give you kind of more of a high level and deep dive into the Credo project itself. But one thing I wanted to highlight is not only are we focusing on promoting digital twin projects, we're also looking at what we can do to kind of progress the ecosystem ourselves. So we have kind of developed this framework, which we call challenge missions, which will enable us at the Digital Twin Hub to help different organizations to kind of propel themselves in their own digital twin journey. I won't go into the deep dive of this framework, and our director, Justin Anderson, loves to discuss it. So if anybody wants to kind of learn more, potentially how you can work with us to kind of propel yourself in your digital twin journey, feel free to reach out, and I can connect you with our director, who would definitely like to walk you through it. But it wouldn't be a presentation without a plug at the end. So the Digital Twin Hub itself, kind of as Alexandra and Mark mentioned, it's an open source free community where we really encourage people to come together. And I'm very grateful to work on the project that they helped create and help keep it alive. But it really doesn't continue to grow and progress unless we have members and new learnings from across the globe. So if you scan that QR code, that will take you to our registration page. Registration is like maybe 10 questions. And once you've completed that, you'll have full access to our site, which will enable you to learn from all the learnings and hopefully potentially offer your learnings to our community. And as I mentioned before, if you have any questions around the Digital Twin Hub or anything connected to it, you can reach out to me at john.holden@cp.catapult.org.uk. I know it's long. Or you can find me on LinkedIn at John Holden, and I'll be happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, yeah, we have a lot to learn from you guys. And like I said, I'm very happy that we get connected. I was thinking, like, if we have any questions from the audience, we should start there. I have a lot of questions for you guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very distant.
Yeah.
In my Priniciples work, I work digital twins. I've done so for 5 years. Started off with existing buildings, understanding why existing buildings are made pretty poorly. So they went into construction, and then it turned into smart cities, national digital twins, and now global digital twins. I actually interviewed people from the Gemini Principles a couple of years ago for my podcast. So I was wondering, like, I've never heard about what you said, and I'm part of the Digital Twin Consortium in the US. So I think like your initiative is super interesting. I But the Gemini principles back then, that was more of an academic exercise in sort of, thinking in how this would be rolled out to cities, et cetera, et cetera. But at that point, I think 3 years ago, that hadn't really happened. And I think what is the adoption of applying the Gemini principles? Is that something that you've been looking at as well? Because I thought that was a sort of a challenge that they weren't really sure how to roll it out and just making it visible for everyone, but not really measuring was there any impact on Gemini principles, any fine tuning, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just a point about that. Sure. You go.
So the Gemini principles was you're right, was one of the first things we did was try to get that almost the conscience for digital twins. And we hope it was, rather than an academic piece of work, something that people could pick up and use. And we did find that happened. So as an example, Glasgow University built a new campus while CV was live, and they based their data sharing on the Gemini principles. And we have a number of other examples, some government projects, again, they've been based on the Gemini principles. So they are rolled out. It was always meant to be a living document. So people will take it and use it as fits their purpose. As Mark said, it's about what is the purpose and what are the outcomes. So the Gemini principles are flexible, or we hope flexible enough so that they can be used in different aspects.
Yeah, I think that point about them being flexible is really important, about them being principles, because then that means you can apply the principles in a number of different ways in a number of different sectors. So what they were trying to do very early on, as Alexandra said, was kind of lay a kind of a values-based foundation. But also what they did was outline what we mean by an ecosystem of connected digital twins, because until that point, there was a little bit of a feeling that if you were going to have a national digital twin, it would be one big twin of everything. And we had to kind of say, no, it's not that. You can't have that. That doesn't work. What you need is lots of different digital twins. You need to connect them up. So the Gemini principles kind of established that as an idea. And what we've found is that has been adopted very widely, very broadly, and pretty much internationally, I would say. So see the same thing happening in South Korea and China and Hong Kong and Australia and New Zealand. I could go on. So it's almost as if they've established some principles which have been picked up. What I think would be really interesting is to, following on from your question, is to work out what the value of that is. Because we keep on hearing feedback about how people are picking them up and using it. What would be nice is to kind of do a bit of an evaluation of it and see how far they've gone and how much value they've added. I suspect it's quite a bit.
But do you think they will be need to be updated, and who is in charge, who is managing these principles?
I think it would be a very good thing for them to be updated. Like Alexandra said, it's intended to be dynamic. It's not kind of set in stone or some kind of tablets where you can't change it.
Is there a process for that?
No, there isn't a process. And now that CDBB doesn't exist, there isn't a specific owner. However, I would suggest that the community that John represents here is the ideal place to do that, because it sort of feels better that people are involved in updating it, rather than there's some secret experts in a room who update it and say, there you go. I would prefer to see a community involvement.
Yep. And that's kind of piggybacking off that. That's where when people do use the Gemini principles to kind of develop their own systems, that we kind of ask for that feedback and give them the opportunity to kind of showcase how they've done it. Because that's really where not only do we learn kind of like how they are kind of being implemented in the world today, but it also gives the opportunity for different use cases to see like, oh, really, this is how you can take it and how you can do it. And the thing that we always mention when discussing the Gemini principles or the use of Gemini principles is we understand it's very much not the end all be all. And we're happy when people take it and say, well, I want to do it with this way. I want to change this, because that's what we want. It's kind of like they said, it's meant to be flexible and applied in different situations in slightly different ways. But I do agree, updating would be good, and community involvement in that would be great.
Yeah, thank you very much for the very nice presentations. And
I also think something like the digital hub, the digital twin hub is really useful. In the end, however, of course, it's again one platform.
Mhm.
And the question is, you have completely decentralized developments going on. So I mean, for spatial data catalogs, for example, like in the Inspire project in European level, we have these distributed catalog services which are being filled by local institutions, and where then the metadata is being harvested to higher levels, even up to the European level. So there is one European hub where you can connect, but all this information that is in there has been generated and is also being maintained on lower levels.
Mhm.
Is there some similar development, or do you also have thought about standardizing this kind of metadata that you probably store about activities, about the digital twins? I mean, it's not just about data, it's also about knowledge and about maybe stakeholders who are involved, products which are being involved.
Yeah, we definitely are kind of exploring how best to create a framework which will enable us to share those learnings from that ground level up. And kind of what we started with is really kind of connecting the dots between the different digital twin ecosystems that exist. So we are not the end all be all of digital twin communities. Digital Twin Consortium in the US was already mentioned. There's a digital twin partnership in Australia. Sweden's creating their own digital twin hub. So where we kind of see the value in is first creating those strong connections. So whenever there is learning, it can be shared across the pipeline and back. Because just in no surprise, each nation takes a different approach in their digital twins, kind of digital twin journey. So we're looking to kind of create those connections so that we can share that information. Now, we definitely aren't that far in advance to where that learning is sharing, constantly, and all the learnings are kind of implied and applied in different situations. But that is something we are very much exploring. Yeah.
Can I add to that? Because I think that there's a number of different connections which are relevant in answering your question. And I think that the idea of connecting a variety of different communities really makes a lot of sense. And so having a connection between the Digital Twin Consortium and the Digital Twin Hub, it makes sense. And you can kind of see that actually you have an even bigger, better community if you do join up those communities. So there's a thing about joining people up and joining communities up, which I think is very healthy and very, very useful, even if the models are different, because you're probably aware that the Digital Twin Consortium is more of a pay-to-play model, whereas the Digital Twin Hub is free at point of use. So different models, but there's definitely something to share because then we all benefit from it. So that's a kind of a community connection. But then maybe underlying it all is an even more important connection, which is the data connection. And I think that you're going towards that, because I think that fundamentally what we need in order to make connections between digital twins is a data sharing infrastructure, because the connections they are data connections. And in order for that to be interoperable across multiple sectors, multiple organizations, there has to be an element of it which is shared. And I'm not suggesting that you impose just one standard, because that probably wouldn't work. But there needs to be some approach to interoperability, which then gets you into semantic solutions and the whole idea of getting shared taxonomies and ontologies. And an awful lot of people don't want to talk about that because it's way too detailed and you don't want to go down there. However, some people do need to talk about it, because if we actually want to have this interoperability across organizations and sectors and countries, then we have to address this shared ontology. So yes, we have thought about it, and we are seeking to develop a data sharing infrastructure. It's just that it's hard, because if you go to, are we being recorded? If you, sometimes it's hard to convince politicians that this is a good thing, because what we're talking about is long-term, it's strategic, it's joined up, and quite often we find that politics is none of those things. That wasn't too controversial, was it?
I can make some cuts. Yes, please.
Yeah, couldn't agree more about the last thing you said there. Been dealing with that a little bit the latest time, but thank you for the presentation. Really nice to know more about this, and I come from Business Turku in Finland, and we work a lot with startups and developing things with companies and so on. And I was interested in the SME and the startups thing you mentioned there, that you also provide information for or something. Do you have a process for the startups and getting them involved or
So-
how do you work with that?
Typically, what it can happen in a few ways. First and foremost, we always try to promote any opportunity that could be valuable to SMEs, just so that they kind of have the opportunity to see like, oh, you know, that funding opportunity maybe works for my organization. So we provide that. But on the flip side, what we also really try to do is at Connected Places Catapult, digital twins are one of the many things that we work on. So there are different teams that work with SMEs to develop aviation technology, rail technology, things like that. So what we really try to do is leverage that connection within our own ecosystem. So for like an SME such as yourself, what we'll try to do is figure out, is there an opportunity that exists kind of in the ecosystem currently? And if not, is there partners or parties that we can connect you with that can kind of help you facilitate that journey? And then hopefully it kind of is a twofold benefit to where you'll have us on the digital twin team helping to progress your project because it's digital twin. But then we can also get, let's say, the rail team or the rail sector involved because it's progressing the rail sector at the same time. So that's typically how we kind of work with SMEs. But it can drastically change depending on the project. So maybe we connect after this and can see if there's any options.
Yeah, but one more related question. So
Yeah.
SMEs, if they would be interested in your looking at what you can provide, then they would register to you and register themselves as startups or SMEs, you know, looking for projects related to digital twins.
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as just kind of making that initial connection. Because it's not, from our perspective, we don't do it for the benefit of, the sole benefit for us is to kind of promote more learnings into the community.
Okay.
So essentially, there's a good likelihood if you didn't come to us with your project, that maybe we would see it out in the ecosystem and be like, oh, that's a really cool project from an SME. We need to help promote that. So that's kind of the work we'll do is like, there isn't much from your end to connect with us because we actually need the SMEs to be successful. So we oftentimes are out searching for those SMEs to promote. But it is always nice when the SMEs come from the other perspective and they seek us for assistance.
I just wanted to comment that my initial comments, which just made that I was really frustrated in the beginning, like 3 years ago, because we didn't really have a plan with the dialogue perspective. And I saw that the Gemini principles were amazing. Honestly, I thought it was phenomenal work, but it's like getting something out and not having an idea how to get it back. It's basically how the world works today. Right? And that we have these solutions, we have all the solutions worldwide, but they're just stuck. Right? If, you know, we can just share them in better ways, then someone, you know, solving a problem in Japan will be able to disseminate that to all the 100,000 places that has the same problem. And I think that's sort of, again, I just wanted to, I really love the presentation, so I just wanted to say that.
And I think that partly goes back to my piece on the leadership that needs to be in place, because otherwise we do sit in our silos, we don't share, we don't disseminate. And the hub's part of the solution. That leadership's part of the solution, community is part of the solution. There are lots of different pieces. Again, it's a systems thing. But the key bit is finding actually that global leadership that will pull that together.
So I'd like to build on that as well, because I think that this is so unbelievably important. And if I can just kind of come at this from a couple of different angles. I mean, the first one would be the kind of challenges that we face at the moment as humanity are joined up challenges. You know, climate change doesn't happen in silos, so you can't solve it in silos. And it's the same thing with protecting biodiversity or moving towards a circular economy. You know, these big things that we as humanity need systems-based solutions. And you maybe in the past we could get away without it. You maybe our forebears could manage to survive by having silos, and obviously we have because that's the history, isn't it? But now it's not good enough, so we have to address this silo issue if we are going to address these big problems, which then means, and it's jumping back onto what Alexandra said, we need a different approach to making things get more joined up. And I think the idea of connecting digital twins is kind of the tool set that we can bring to the party. But in addition to having a competent tool set that will help us, we also need the people to get joined up. And so I think anything that we can do that can facilitate the connections so that we end up with better connected solutions is kind of exactly what we, humanity, need right now. But in order for that to happen, we need some leaders who get it, some leaders who can work out that making these connections is the way forwards. And that's why I agree with what Alexandra said about the type of leadership. You know, we need visionary, boundary spanning leadership in order to make these connections. And I think if we don't have that, then we're stuffed, basically, if that's not too strong a word.
Yeah.
One more question, if that's basically, do you have any experience or have any, you have been collaborating with a lot of different groups or a lot of different companies about cooperatives. So the question is, for example, because I think today we have a big problem on who is running a digital twin for maybe a city. Typically, it's a public body, but then again, it's quite limited on that view. However, if you really want to come up and bring something that basically is jointly used on the one hand side by bringing data, bringing functionalities into, and on the other side, however, also making use of that, I think more you always will need to have something like some central services, like for example a catalog or some basic foundational data that is basically available. So, however, that has to be paid, that has to be basically maintained by somebody, and so the question is, do you have any experiences whether there are some working cooperatives where basically public, the public civil citizens maybe, and also companies really paying a share in order to keep this running?
Joe, or shall I have a go?
You can go first.
So the simple answer is no, not aware of people doing that yet, but they have to, because what you've pointed to is exactly what we need. That is precisely right. And I would say maybe rather than using the word centralized, because that then has the connotation of kind of command and control. And I think the model that we're talking about is much more of connecting and coordinating, collaborating. It's a connective solution rather than a hierarchical solution. So I think what we need is something that is shared, some shared services rather than centralized. But that's just maybe semantics. But having recognized that we need that, then yes, that's exactly what we should be setting up. You know, these can be social enterprises, it can be startups, it can be SMEs that can start to see the opportunities in this new space. Because I do think it's a new space. We are creating a new market here. So long as we crack this issue of interoperability. If we don't have the interoperability in the federation, then there's no game. There's nothing to play. But if we do have that, then what you just described is exactly what we need. So if you can start it up, go with it.
Yeah, the problem is, it seems to be very difficult because nobody, in the end, has done it. And that's basically my question. Is it just a utopia, or is it?
It's starting to happen. So, as an example, the solution providers, the tech vendors, whatever you would like to call them. So I was speaking to one of the bigger ones, and I won't mention the name. And the chap I was speaking to saying, what I would love is for all 6 of the big vendors, plus anybody else wants to get up on stage and talk to the things that we share in common. There's a lot that we share in common, our ways of thinking, what we need to do. We know we need to work together. We know we can't just say, this is firm A's digital twin and doesn't connect with firm B's digital twin. That doesn't produce what we need. And actually the pie is much bigger if we all work together. And this is from a super commercial, really hard-nosed commercial tech vendor. So they're not there yet, but at least they're talking about it. They're starting. So if we can get those little incremental changes in other areas, I'm hoping, I have to believe that we can get this to work.
And if I could just build again on that, because I think that in an ideal world, one would imagine that this kind of connecting and coordinating would be something that government should do, because it's preventing a market failure. And I want to talk about market failure later on, but it prevents the failure to federate. and it's difficult for individual organizations to coordinate federation. They benefit from the federation, but it's difficult to coordinate it. So government ideally should do that, but for the reasons we talked about before, government doesn't do that. So who else will? We can see an opportunity. Somebody needs to step up into that. So what is it? Is it going to be industry, a collaboration, or academia, or some kind of coordination between them? But this is an opportunity, and what it leads to is much better decision making at a city level and better outcomes for people and nature. So it's like the prize is big, so let's do it. There's one more thing, if I may just add into this, which is that the nature of federation, I think, means that I don't think we will have a city twin. I don't think it's like that. There's likely to be many twins, but they need to talk to each other, because most city administrations are responsible for part of what happens in the city, but not everything. They might not be responsible for transport or for energy or for the water supply, but they're all connected. And so what that means is that in order to get the city twins to work, they have to interoperate, which then means you need what you pointed to. So I guess what I'm saying is it's a big nothing answer here, because I'm saying what you say, that's what we want. It doesn't exist at the moment, but that's an opportunity, isn't it? Let's go and do it.
I'm working on all of this, and it does exist, and I can show it as well, actually.
Right.
It's more like, it's not necessarily just coordinating, but it's orchestrating. And I think doing that at a global level, and it's not only about the technical observability, as in the data and how data is working together, but especially how people can work together. And now with XR, VR, real-time data, we can actually do that at a planetary scale at the speed of latency. So I think it's actually less about data and technical stuff, and more about how humans can actually work together. And that can really be facilitated with modern tools used in the right order. So I'm working with a lot of these things actually globally. So I would love to.
So you should get on the stage.
Yeah.
I'm speaking data.
Oh, okay.
But really interesting. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah.
You said some different players could take this role, right? And I think one of the most important players there are the academic to take this role.
So I think academia has a huge role to play. And I think it needs to be linked with the practitioner. So we can't have one without the other. So absolutely, academia provides often a really nice host, and the University of Cambridge was host to CDBB. It was a great place for us to sort of sit and live and work. But if we just stayed within the confines of the university, we wouldn't have got the understanding of what it's really like out there. So I think there's a really strong, I think Mark had the slide up with industry, academia and government. I think we need that tripartite.
It is the link between them. There are the players.
Yeah, that Venn diagram, if you've got the people who can sit in the middle, absolutely.
Okay, any other questions? I have about 5 minutes left, so if you guys want to, I don't know, say something that we missed or add something, or
Yeah, I've got a slot on the stage later on as well, so I don't want to.
What are you
No.
talking about? Which session?
It's the last
Very
one.
last one.
It's the one when everyone's asleep or they've gone.
So don't go, please stay. It's going to be great. It's about the future of digital twins and what comes next.
I got a question though, but in terms of a standardized way of working with digital twins, I've seen that in the digital twin consortium, been in healthcare, infrastructure, telecommunications, energy, basically everything that exists. And I said everyone has a different approach of addressing the problems. And again, digital twin methodology, tool, concept, whatever that is, but it's supposed to be a virtual representation of reality. So is that, I think that's again how I would phrase it, like you start with reality, but now there's a lot of focus on the tool, which is not necessarily great on its own. But the question is basically, what do you have like a standardized approach for attacking problems in healthcare, in energy, infrastructure, manufacturing, supply chains, et cetera, Have you seen that yet? Or is that something that needs to happen to be able to compare, initiatives in Australia, with initiatives in Sweden, with initiatives in that. Is that something that you reflected on? Is that something that you've seen?
So we deliberately didn't go down that route because our view was that it was about making the connections between those individual projects rather than making sure all those projects were standardized. Different governance structures, different geographies, different cultures, different legislature needs different ways of working. So digital twin in Singapore will be very different from one in Europe, will be very different from one in the US.
Yeah.
And that's okay, providing they can talk to each other and exchange data and ideas effectively. And the same is true across sectors. So no, we didn't. I'm not. There needs to be some pieces that are standardized. Clearly, that interoperability piece relies on some standardization. But beyond the what is necessary to make them function, personally, I wouldn't countenance too much standardization. I think it's worth letting the market find the best solution for that.
Not so much standardization, but a standardized way of approaching the problem. Yeah. But anyway, we can talk about it. I just want.
So I'd like to kind of come back on what you're asking, if that's okay, because I think you're exactly right to point towards a standard approach rather than just standards. So what I'd like to do, if I may, is just kind of join together what you said and what Alexandra said, because what we found was that there are an awful lot of people trying to define digital twins, define it in a perfect little sentence, and getting into a big old muddle. And you end up with 100 different definitions. They're all slightly different to each other. And then you have somebody saying, well, my thing is a digital twin, but your thing isn't a digital twin because yours doesn't comply with my little definition. And it becomes very exclusionary. Whereas what we found was it's much better to describe a digital twin well and to have flexibility within that description and to describe an approach rather than a tight definition. Because then you could be much more inclusionary, and that approach seemed to be really good. And so I heard some of it on the stage today, and one of them, which just made me flinch each time I heard it, was real time. And think, ouch! It doesn't have to be real time, because real time means you need a millisecond refresh rate. That's what real time is. But what happens if you've got a digital twin of a glacier? It doesn't change every millisecond, so you don't need a millisecond refresh rate. You only need to maybe update it every month. So the language which we used was right time rather than real time. And what that pointed us to was the importance of purpose. Now I'm getting to your question, because I think that a really good approach, which I've seen happen again and again, is the starting with the purpose. Is what is this digital twin for? What decisions are we trying to make better? Because what that will then do is pretty much point you towards all of the kind of the components. What do you need? How are you going to collect the data? What is the data refresh rate? What kind of model do you want to use? What is the fidelity of the model? Where does the human fit in the loop? Do you have a human in the loop? All of these are variables. And whether you have a human in the loop or you don't, it's still a digital twin because of this kind of embracing inclusionary description of digital twins. But deciding whether you do have a human in the loop is to do with the purpose. So I think that the overall driving approach that helps to have success in the digital twins is start with your purpose and then work out from that, because that will tell you what data you need, what model you need. Everything will come from the purpose.
Okay, this is the last question then.
It's just a comment on this. Actually, I'm also involved in the German standardization on urban digital twins. So we're currently in the German national standardization body. We're trying to come up with a definition and some rules. And the most important thing is, first of all, purpose, so that as you mentioned, so we also say it must be for a specific purpose. And then you can also have multiple twins in the same city, because some may be focusing on some specific use cases, some not. But what we also add is, first of the other thing that you say, right time, and the coupling with reality and the digital model. The feedback can also be you're producing urban plans that are then being executed in the next 5 years by somebody, which is also, of course, a bit of a feedback that is coming from the digital side. And the last thing I wanted to mention was basically governance. So that we say the digital twin is not just digital data or something, but if you talk about an urban digital twin and you want to define one, you also need to be aware about the laws and the governance structures. And so, because that should also be part of it, because otherwise It's just a bunch of data. So
I have another plug based on that. So we have a working group which is entirely focused on developing the governance models and trust that underpin digital twins. And it's led by a large law firm, Pinsent Masons, and they're actually releasing a report, which is essentially a governance model. And they're going to present on the Gemini call on, if I can get my date right, January 9th. They're going to present that governance model and kind of walk through it, discuss it. And then out there, you could also talk to Anne-Marie, who's kind of led that project. So definitely go through the link, register, and you can learn more about that there.
And can I do a plug as well? Which is, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Yeah,
Please connect with all of us.
I'd really like to see 15 more connections by lunchtime, please.
Okay, perfect. So let's connect, and that's everything for this session. Thank you very much. Very happy.
You can send me.